right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to take a whirlwind tour through more than 2,000 years of Western ethical thought. We're going to see how some of the smartest people in history tried to answer one of the biggest questions we all face. So, how did we go from thinking virtue was all about knowledge to believing we're radically free to choose our own values? Strap in.
Everything, and I mean everything, boils down to this one question. It's probably kept you up at night a few times, right? It's not just about what you're allowed to do, but what makes a life genuinely good. What does it mean to be a virtuous, fulfilled person? This question is the engine that drives this entire story.
Okay, first stop on our journey, ancient Greece. We're starting with a man who totally rewired how we think about right and wrong. Before him, morality was mostly about tradition, or, doing what the gods told you. But this guy came along and said, nope, the real key to a good life isn't just obedience, it's using your brain. And his name, of course, was Socrates. Now, this might sound incredibly simple, but it was absolutely revolutionary. Socrates believed that nobody willingly does something bad. He argued that evil is really just a form of ignorance. Think about it. If you truly knew deep down what the right thing to do was, you'd just do it. So for him, the path to being a good person was through knowledge. And he didn't just talk the talk. He had this wild teaching method where he'd get his students to go out and pester the so-called experts. There's this great story where they corner a judge and ask for a simple definition of a murderer. Well, the judge couldn't come up with one that didn't have a million exceptions. What about a soldier in a war, a doctor in a failed surgery? It completely exposed the ignorance that was hiding behind that robe of authority. Well, as you can imagine, this did not make him popular with the people in charge. He was put on trial for corrupting the youth, which was basically their way of saying he was teaching kids to think for themselves. His friends even set up a jailbreak for him, but he refused to go. He believed that the search for truth was more important than his own life. By choosing to die, he made the ultimate statement that some ideas are worth dying for. After Socrates was gone, the philosophical baton was passed to his star pupil, Plato. And then Plato, in turn, taught another genius, Aristotle. It's like this incredible intellectual dynasty. And these two didn't just preserve Socrates' ideas, they built on them, creating a much richer, more complex picture of what it takes to be good. So Plato looked at Socrates' idea and thought, okay, knowledge as virtue is a great start, but it's a little more complicated than that. He argued that virtue isn't just one thing. It's more like a harmony of four key parts. You need wisdom to know what's right, courage to actually do it, temperance to control your desires, and justice to bring it all into balance, both inside yourself and in the world. Then along comes Aristotle, who was always the more practical, boots-on-the-ground kind of thinker. He looks at Plato's list of virtues and basically asks, yeah, but how do we actually do that in real life? And his big answer was the golden mean. For Aristotle, being good isn't about being extreme. It's about finding that perfect sweet spot, that balance point, right between two vices. Let's just take courage. Being completely fearless isn't courage, that's recklessness. And being totally paralyzed by fear, well, that's cowardice. For Aristotle, true courage is that golden mean, right in the middle. Same goes for generosity. It's the perfect spot between being stingy and being wasteful. It's a super practical guide for how to actually live well. Okay, we're going to hit the fast forward button now. We're jumping nearly 2,000 years into the future, landing in the modern era. And here, a huge new conflict pops up, one that really pits the results of our actions against the reasons we do them. This brings us to the two heavyweight champions of modern ethics. In one corner, you've got utilitarianism. The idea here is simple. A moral action is whatever creates the most happiness for the most people. But in the other corner, you have the incredibly strict duty-based ethics of Immanuel Kant, who said, forget the results, they're irrelevant. See, for Kant, the only thing in the whole universe that's good without any exceptions is a good will. Think about it. Money, intelligence, even health, all of those can be used for evil. But the intention to do good, to do your duty, he says that is always good in and of itself, even if you try and fail spectacularly. It just shines on its own, like a jewel. And Kant really lived this stuff. The guy was so committed to his principles that, according to one story, he walked through a massive blizzard to get to the university to teach. When he finally got there, the classroom was completely empty. But for him, it didn't matter. The students might have failed in their duty to show up, but that was no reason for him to fail in his.
So, up until now, we've been talking a lot about the individual's moral compass. But what about our place in the bigger picture? A new way of thinking, heavily influenced by the German philosopher Hegel, came along and shifted the focus from me to we.
This idea gets a really catchy name, My Station and Its Duties. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It suggests that a good, meaningful life comes from figuring out your specific role, as a doctor, a parent, a mechanic, whatever it is, and then dedicating yourself to fulfilling the duties of that role as best you can.
You can really see this philosophy in action if you look at the London Blitz during World War II. When the bombs started falling, people didn't wait for orders. The fire wardens, the nurses, the drivers, everyone knew their station and they just did their job. It was this incredible collective sense of duty, of social purpose, that really helped the nation pull through.
But what happens when all those old foundations, God, tradition, even the idea of society, start to crumble? Well, that brings us to our last stop on this journey, and maybe the most challenging one of all, existentialism.
When Friedrich Nietzsche made this shocking statement, he wasn't celebrating. He was sounding an alarm. What he meant was that the idea of God, which had been the source of all meaning and morality for centuries, was just no longer believable for modern people. And this left humanity staring into a terrifying void. So that raises the biggest question of all, doesn't it? If there's no divine plan, no pre-written script for our lives, well, who's in charge? Who gets to decide what's right and wrong? Who's the author of our future? This is the profound and frankly terrifying answer that existentialism gives. We are. For the first time, we have to face the fact that we are totally alone and totally free to create our own meaning and our own values, right from scratch.
Now, this isn't supposed to be a philosophy of despair. It's a call to take on incredible responsibility. It's really a three-step path. 1, you have to recognize just how radically free you are. 2, you have to choose your path, your values, your actions. And 3, this is the hardest part, you have to accept total, absolute responsibility for those choices, because there's no one else to blame. There's a story from the French Resistance that captures this perfectly. It may be a myth, but the spirit is what matters. A washerwoman is confronted by Nazi soldiers who tell her they've defeated her army. And she just looks at them and says, "You have defeated our army, but you have not defeated our nation. We will fight you in every street." In that moment of total defeat, she chose her value, freedom. She chose her action, resistance. That is a choice nobody could ever take away from her. So we end right back where we started, but with a whole new set of tools. From Socrates' search for knowledge to Aristotle's idea of balance, Kant's sense of duty, and the existentialist's radical freedom. The history of ethics isn't just some dusty old lesson. It's a menu of powerful ideas for how to live. And so now the question isn't just for the philosophers. It's for you. Which path will you choose?